All right. Welcome to the very first video lecture of general psychology. I'm trying out some new video recording software right now, and unfortunately, it does not seem to be working quite right with the webcam. So this is just going to be a disembodied voice going through these lecture slides with you. Anyway, the first day of general psychology, I usually like to give a short psychology quiz on some broad psychology topics. Usually I'm teaching this class in person, so I have you write down 1 through 9 on a piece of paper, have you jot down your answers, and then we talk about those answers afterwards. Obviously online, this will be a little bit different. So we'll just go through the questions and then I'll talk about the correct answers in detail at the end. So, without further ado, number 1, stressful or traumatic events can cause what are called flashbulb memories. These flashbulb memories are remembered for a long time and are extremely vivid, detailed, and accurate. Is that true or is that false? Number 2, humans are the only animals that are motivated by higher needs such as love, belonging, or mental stimulation. All other animals are solely motivated by basic needs, needs like hunger, thirst, sex, the need to reproduce. Is that true or is that false? Number 3, we only use 10% of our brains. Is that true or is that false? Number 4, if you express anger about someone, that emotion will disappear sooner than if you buried the emotion and never expressed it. Is that true or is that false? Is it better to express your anger and get rid of it or bury your emotion? Does that get rid of it? Number 5, in romantic relationships, opposites attract. I'm sure that's something you've heard before. If you've ever watched a romantic comedy in your life, I'm sure you've heard that. Is that true or is that false? Is that based on reality? Number 6, people can learn new information such as a foreign language while they are asleep. Is that true or is that false? Hypnosis is a useful technique that helps retrieve memories. Is that true or is that false? Number 8, electroconvulsive or shock therapy is physically dangerous and used mainly as a form of punishment. Maybe you've seen an old movie where someone's in a psych ward, maybe in a straitjacket even, and they're sort of strapped down against their will and they go through something that looks incredibly painful. That's what I'm referring to there. And the last question, removing half of the brain is fatal. That's one of those questions that just seems so crazy. It might be false, it might be true, I don't know. It's just crazy. All right, so those are your 9 questions. And unfortunately, the answer for every single one of these questions is false. This would be more accurately labeled the psychology myths quiz. These are all very, very popular myths that exist in psychology, or I should say in the broader public. And I don't want you to feel stupid if you thought any of those were true. There's a very good reason that a lot of those myths persist. There's a very good reason that many people think almost all of those are true. So let's dive into it. Number 1, stressful or traumatic events can cause what are called flashbulb memories. These flashbulb memories are remembered for a long time and they are extremely vivid, detailed, and accurate. This is false. We do experience something called flashbulb memories for extremely stressful, extremely vivid events. Things that are usually very emotionally important for us, maybe the death of a loved one, if you witness that personally. I think that I have a flashbulb memory for where I was on September 11th, 2001. I was in high school at the time when the Twin Towers came down. Sorry, my neighbor dog just started barking. Anyway, Um, I remember being in the school cafeteria. I remember the TVs there being on. I remember everyone talking about it. I remember sitting across the lunch table from my friend Justin Scott. I can vividly remember the collared blue and white striped shirt that he was wearing. And I can remember him saying that, well, we're just going to find out who did this and kick their butts. Um, None of that might be true, but I am convinced that it is true. This is the special part of flashbulb memories. We feel like they're less susceptible to forgetting, but they're normal memories just like any other memory. They get forgotten, the small little details get forgotten at the same rate as other memories. And we know this through experimentation. We know this through scientific research. And that's going to be a theme of this psychology myths quiz. These are all interesting ideas. They've been pursued using scientific tools, and we have come to the conclusion that they are all false. We'll talk more about flashbulb memories during the memory chapter. Number 2, humans are the only animals that are motivated by higher needs. This is false. Animals can show behaviors like altruism. They can perform behaviors that seem to be for the greater good at their own expense. And animals are often motivated to play. They seem to experience something that we would call joy. If you've ever seen a dog or a cat play, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those would certainly not be basic needs, things to play. We'll talk briefly a little bit about what's called comparative psychology. This is comparing animals to humans. But we'll touch on this. We won't dive too deep into it. Number 3, we only use 10% of our brains. This is false. This is an idea that's been around for a long, long time. It's something that's very pervasive in popular culture, but it is false. Every single part of your brain is useful. Every single part of your brain has some purpose. Nothing is up there just being unused, waiting for you to tap into it, and suddenly you'll be 100% smarter than you were previously, or something like that. And we know this because if you were to experience some sort of brain trauma and a part of your brain stopped working, there would more than likely be some deficits. We would see that, okay, that part that is damaged was actually being used. Number 4, it is healthier to express your anger about someone than to bury the emotion. This is false. Venting anger can actually make us think worse about someone we are angry at. It also encourages us to act in an angry manner the next time we have some sort of disagreement, especially with that person. So if you want to get rid of emotions long term, it's best not to act on those emotions. The more you act on those emotions, the more likely you are to act on those emotions in the future. We'll talk about that when we get to emotion and motivation. Number 5, in romantic relationships, opposites attract. This is false. Sorry, rom-com writers, you got this one wrong. But again, there's a very good reason why we think this. It's something that has been very pervasive in popular culture, and this is an idea that scientists looked at using scientific tools, using research tools, and they found that people are beyond a doubt attracted to people who are similar to themselves. And you can judge similarity on just about any spectrum you want. Physical attractiveness, socioeconomic status, geographical location, height, weight, skin color. In the vast majority of cases, people prefer people who are similar to themselves. Now, that doesn't mean you're looking for an exact replica or an exact copy of yourselves, but if someone is different on one spectrum, but they're similar on every other spectrum, well, then that's probably a good match because there's a lot more similarity than difference there. Moving on, maybe, possibly, there we go. Number 6. People can learn new information, such as a foreign language, while they are asleep. This is false. Wouldn't that be awesome? This is the one that I want to be true so bad. If you could just put some headphones on, fall asleep, and wake up speaking fluent Spanish or something like that, oh, that'd be way too cool. But unfortunately, the vast majority of types of learning that we experience are effortful, meaning we have to put a lot of effort into learning things. This claim was initially based on just bad science. There was a study that came out back in the 50s. The military was very interested in this. If they could simply train their soldiers in their sleep, that'd be amazing. And then this study that made this claim was found to just be kind of a bad study. They weren't very careful with how they collected their data, and they sort of exaggerated their claims, which happens from time to time. Number 7, hypnosis is a useful technique that helps retrieve memories. This is also false. What usually happens under hypnosis when you're trying to retrieve quote unquote repressed memories is that hypnotized people create memories through suggestion. This is a very, very powerful way to make false memories, is through suggestion. And we're going to talk a lot about this when we get to the memory chapter. All right, our last two questions. Shock therapy is physically dangerous and used mainly as a form of punishment. This is false. There was a time when that was true. So this one is one of those myths that definitely has a very, very large kernel of truth to it. Back in the day when people were forcibly restrained in psych wards, in straitjackets and things of that nature, shock therapy was administered as a way to punish inmates there. Nowadays, we take a very different view of it. We've become enlightened in how we treat people with mental illnesses. And nowadays, shock therapy can actually be a very, very helpful form of therapy. It's usually delivered in extraordinarily small doses, nothing like the crazy complete body convulsions that you might see in an old movie or something like that. And it's also something that we don't fully understand. It's usually used as something of a last resort when no other form of therapy is working, no other form of drugs are working. And so shock therapy is kind of used as a last ditch effort. And in some cases, it is incredibly helpful. And the last question on our psychology myths quiz, removing half of the brain is fatal. Again, this is false. You can remove the entire half of someone's brain. We call this a hemispherectomy. It's a very dramatic treatment. It's usually done in cases of severe epilepsy. And if it is done at a young enough age, we can actually see very, very little impairment in later life. This is because we have the ability to be extraordinarily plastic when we are younger. Plastic is, or plasticity is another word for flexible. So brains are incredibly plastic. They can recover from immense amounts of damage with very little impairment sometimes. So we'll talk about that later on as well. So that is our psychology myths quiz. And okay, see if we can go back. There we go. So this quiz, I want you to start thinking about how you know things. I'm hoping to get my lesson across that there was at least one question in there where you thought that was true. And maybe that was something that you had quote unquote known for a long, excuse me, known for a long time. Maybe it was something that you never really questioned. Maybe you thought it was true for years and years and years, so you just stopped thinking critically about it. And again, you're not stupid if you thought true to any number of those. There's a good reason why you might think one or more of those is true. But this brings up the bigger question of how do we know if things are true? How do we know if things are facts or myths? And the best way that we have right now to separate myth from fact is what's called the scientific method. I'm sure you're at least somewhat familiar with the scientific method. We're going to dive into it, specifically how it applies to the psychological sciences. So, this is the gold standard right now for how we can tell if something is true or not, how something makes it into a textbook, and how it just makes it into this psychology myths quiz. All right, so that is my introduction to psychology on day one. And I'm going to get this uploaded to the website, and then you guys will have access to it there. All right, thanks for listening, and I hope the audio was good enough to hear.